Everyone, my name is Samantha. Before I start, can I get a show of hands that is anyone kind of disappointed in the 2011-2012 snowboarding and ski seasons? Okay. This has been caused by the climate change. Climate change is defined as the major change in the temperature, rainfall, snow, or wind measurement. And there are two causes that causes global warming and climate change. One is the human cause, including burning fossil fuels, cutting down forests, and the land use. These activities can cause greenhouse gases produced and enter the atmosphere. The other cause is a nature cause, which includes the Earth orbits, the sun's intensity, and the circulation of the ocean at the atmosphere, and the volcano activities. These are stated by the United States Environmental Protection Agency in the Climate Change Science Facts. My main claim is human activities has increased the carbon dioxide level and the methane level that has significant influence in the climate change. My first claim is greenhouse gases level increase in the atmosphere that causes by human activities, such as we produce CO2 levels by burning fossil fuels in car factories and electricity productions. And the other one is mining coals and oil allows methane to escape. For CO2 levels increase in burning fossil fuels, we can see in that since it's climate change, the summer is really hot, and summer conditions result in increase in electricity, such as we use ACs more and electricity to feel cooler. And for mining coal and oil allows the methane to escape into the atmosphere. Mining coal that we mine coal to use to produce energies, which will cost more CO2 to produce. As the opposite side of that, as stated in James Conner's and New York Times article, the European Commission is expected to introduce to a plan to reduce greenhouse gases by using solar energy systems. And my second claim is that human population includes pollution in the CO2 levels. As population increase means more food and more transportation that we need to produce. For transportation, we can now see a lot of cars and that burns fossil fuels and have a lot of CO2 that produces to the atmosphere. By stated in author Westing in New York Times article, in 1970, when worldwide greenhouse gas has just begun to release into the atmosphere, the world population was about 3.7 billion. Nowadays, it's 6.9 billion, which increased 86% of that. Since we have more population, which means more food to produce, and we need more to grow more agricultural like rice, wheat, and more animals such as cows. Agricultural soil that contains animal excrement and fertilizer that helps to produce food and can cause a lot of population to the atmosphere. Lastly, I'm going to talk about since human activities has significant influence in climate change due to the land use by cutting down forests, and that could decrease the oxygen level that produced by plants. As population increase, people need more space to live, and cutting down forests, so we cut down forests to gain living areas. To gain living areas that cause the plants to reduce the oxygen level that are produced by plants. As stated in the Climate Change Starter Guidebook published by the United Nations of Educational, Science, and Cultural Organization, it says like a higher concentration of atmosphere CO2 causes trees and other plants to capture more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. But experiment shows that trees convert much of this extra carbon into producing fine roots and weeds rather than new woods. The effect of CO2 increasing growth but seems to be relatively modest, and it generally seems more strongly in young forests on fertilized soils where there is also sufficient water to sustain the growth. Even if there's more, they can produce more CO2. They can produce more oxygen, but since we're cutting down the plants, so it's going to be hard to reduce the CO2 level. And lastly, because we need more land, people use burning down forests to make more land, and that's which will increase the level of CO2. As defined by the Carnegie Mellon University, this is called deforestation, which means when wood is burned, the carbon dioxide in the trees is released when the wood rots and swamps, methane can be produced. Living trees remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. In my conclusion is that human activities make significant influence on the climate change, especially in the carbon dioxide level. Thank you.
What was the time on that, please?
Oh, it was like 6:30.
6:30? Okay, thank you. My phone just died, so.
Is there an iPhone?
No. All right, well, you do state the proposition. I don't know how significant the impact of human activity is, and that seems to be where the area of dispute would be on this particular subject. Your argument at the very beginning, talking about the change in the ski and snowboard season being a result of global warming, is asserted, and I was kind of waiting for some proof on that particular point, but it never comes about. You keep the argument at a very generic level about the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, and you give good reasons why CO2 in the atmosphere might be going up. I do think that there is a structure here, but I don't think that you're very consistent about citing that structure in the body of the speech. There was an okay preview, but in the body of the speech, it really sounded like all the claims were running together, and it makes it a lot harder to distinguish how issues are being developed. I didn't know that I didn't think that all of the evidence was as complete as it could be either. Some of it seemed a little bit conclusionary. You had some quotes on diminishing CO2, and that, for instance, there was one quote that talked about how Europe was going to do something about trying to reduce CO2, and you use that as proof that there is, in fact, a problem with the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, and I'm not sure that that's a good way to be making that particular inference. There's some factual data about deforestation, but we don't get any information about how that's more widespread than it once was, and therefore it's contributing X amount to the CO2 or the warming that's going on the planet. It sounds like a very basic primer on the sorts of things that are used to contribute or to explain global climate issues, and without much development of individual points, I'm not sure where the disputes are going to be. I don't know that anybody disputes that human activity contributes to CO2 in the atmosphere. The question is, how much does it contribute? How big is that? How much is that contribution accounting for problems that we have, or how big are the problems that we're going to be having as a result of this, and whether or not we could do anything about those kinds of things. That's where the dispute is, and it really feels like you kind of are keeping it at a more generic level, and that's a little bit problematic, because I think there's going to be a little bit less grounds for argument here unless somebody just takes a very clear counter position that suggests that the research here is problematic, or that there's no reason to believe that the atmosphere is changing at all, or in fact that it's going the opposite direction that's being claimed. Now, there might be some data out there that suggests those things. I'm not sure, but I'm not sure that's really where the dispute really should be going. All right, thank you.